Hello and welcome to yet another installment of the Algebra 1 videos. This is a section 6 and this is about solving absolute value equations. So we want to solve absolute value equations using tables or algebra, pointing out solutions that are viable or not viable in a modeling context. We want to create absolute value equations to model and solve problems. So let's first talk about what absolute value means. And so absolute value, and let me just write this down over here. Okay, let's just say absolute value is the distance from zero. Okay, that's the formal definition, distance from zero. Okay, now what we know about distance is that distance is always positive. Okay, so you may have seen this before, and it's really not that hard. But when I think about absolute value, I think whatever is inside the absolute value symbol. So, for an example, like the absolute value of 3 would be 3. The distance from 3 to 0 would be 3. What about the absolute value of -3? This is going to be 3. So what I know about this is that, whatever is inside the absolute value, we make positive. So whatever is inside of the absolute value, we make positive. Okay? Now, it's a little different when we're thinking about solving absolute value equations, because what we have here is I have this absolute value equation that absolute value of x is equal to 4. I'm going to write that down here. So the absolute value of x is equal to 4. Now, what you need to see here is that I want to solve this for x. I want to solve for x, okay? And what I know is that I could have a distance of 4 from 0 starting at the value x equals 4. Okay, so I can rewrite this and say, well, one of my options would be that x is equal to 4 because this distance here is 4. Okay? Now, the other thing that I could say is I could look at the other side and I could say, well, what about -4? Wouldn't the distance from -4 be the same as the distance from 4 to 0? And this is a distance from 4. So I know that x could equal 4, okay, because that gives me a distance of 4. But then I also know that x could equal -4. So I can come in here and say that x is equal to -4. So when I solve my equations for x, okay, in order to get rid of my absolute value symbol, I have to think about this and I say, okay, well, what could the value of x be? The value of x could be positive 4. If I took the absolute value of 4, I would get 4. So let me write that. If I took the absolute value of 4, okay, I would get 4. But what if I took the absolute value of -4? Okay, if I took the absolute value of -4, I would also get 4. So the thing that you need to see here is that when you solve these absolute value equations, in order to get rid of your absolute value, you just set it equal to the positive value and to the negative value, and that's it. So that's kind of the basic of it. What I want to do is kind of do some practice problems and run through a few things with you guys, but let's move on to the next page. Okay, let's take a look at this next problem. This is, this real-world example where it says Marcos and his friend are riding bikes on a local road. They both have a two-way radio station, or radios, that have a 5-mile range of communication, okay? So in case they get separated. So Marcos is at mile marker 38, okay? And it says, what is the smallest and largest mile markers at which the friend could be located and so be able to communicate with Marcos on the two-way radio? So what we realize is that we have this, if we take a look at this graph here and we have this equation, we've got that the absolute value of x minus 38 is equal to 5. So if you take 38 and you decide to add 5 in this direction, okay, you've got 5 miles here, okay, which says that if you're at mile marker 43, you could still talk to Marcos if he's at mile marker 38. Okay, on the flip side, you've still got this other one, this other side that's 5 miles away, okay, and that's going to be at mile marker 33, okay? So let's look at something here. If we think about that last example that we just did where we solved that equation, okay, to get rid of the absolute value symbol, what we would do is we would take what's inside the absolute value, which is x minus 38, and set that equal to positive 5, okay? And then at the same time, I would write this. I would write x minus 38 is equal to negative 5, okay? And that's how we solve these equations, okay? And in order to get rid of the absolute value symbol, we have to set it equal to the number, okay? And then we have to set up another equation and set it equal to the opposite, okay? And then all we're going to do is just add 38 to both sides on all these, okay? And so then we get that x is equal to 43, which is this value right there, okay? And then if I do the same thing, if I add 38 to this side, okay, negative 5 plus 38, that means that x is going to equal 33, which is this number, okay? So, you know, you can look at these on a graph, and you can also, you know, just look at them looking at an equation. And, you know, I just want you guys to be able to go from this step to this step, okay, to get rid of the absolute value symbol. So remember, you set it equal to the number, or you set it equal to the opposite of the number, okay? All right, so same thing over here, all right? Let's do the same thing here. And it doesn't really matter which one you do. You know, this one says it wants the negative case to the left. I don't care what you guys do, but I'm going to rewrite this and get rid of the absolute value symbols and have 2/5 minus 4x is equal to negative 2. Okay? And then I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm going to have 2/5 minus 4x is equal to positive 2. All right? So on both sides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 2/5 from both sides. So minus 2/5. So then we get negative 4x is equal to negative 2 over 1 minus 2 over 5. Okay, so if I get a common denominator here, 5 over 5, I'm going to get, what do we get? Negative 4x is equal to negative 10/5 minus 2/5. Okay, and then let's just check over here. I don't have much room. I got negative 4x is equal to negative 12/5. Okay, and if I divide both sides by negative 4, divide by negative 4. And dividing by negative 4 over here with this fraction is kind of hard, but I could multiply by its reciprocal. Okay, I could multiply by 1/4, negative 1/4. Okay, so the negative 4's go away. I finally get x over here. And if I look, the 12 and the 4 divide out to 3 over 1. And so I have a negative and a negative being multiplied together. So I just get 3/5. So x is equal to 3/5. Okay, and that's it. Okay, it's kind of tricky with the fraction, but that's just something we got to work with, guys. Okay, over here, same thing. I'm going to subtract 2/5 from both sides. And so let me let me clean this up a little bit. So then I get negative 4x is equal to 2 over 1 minus 2/5. So if I get a common denominator of 5, multiply top and bottom by 5, I get negative 4x is equal to 10/5 minus 2/5. Okay, and so then I get negative 4x is equal to, what is that going to give me, 8/5? Okay, if I divide both sides by negative 4, or multiply by 1/4, negative 1/4, then we get this. Okay, then I get that x is equal to, and then the 8 and the 4 divide out to 2 over 1. So I just get negative 2/5. Got to account for that negative 1 times 2 over 5. So I get negative 2/5. Okay, so guys, it's important you understand how I'm getting through all these steps. Okay, if you need to rewatch this video and go back through and make sure you know how to get those, okay? So if we take a look at something else, and it says analyzing absolute value equations, you know, and what I know is that if I have an absolute value equation and this number is positive, okay, if this number is positive, then I have two solutions, okay? If this is 0, okay, then I just have one solution to this equation, okay? And if I have a negative number, then I have no solution. So if this is negative, then I get no solution. No solution. Can't have it. So, and the reason why is you go, okay, if I take the absolute value of, say, 2, I should get 2. If I take the absolute value of negative 2, I should get 2. So every time you take the absolute value of a number, this is always positive. So you can't set always positive. You can't set an absolute value equal to a negative number. It just doesn't work. Okay, you just can't have it. Okay, it just ain't gonna work. Okay, and so then you have something a little bit more complicated where you've got like, say this equation here, and this is what we've been doing, but this says how to solve this absolute value equation. You want to isolate. So basically, what you want to do is you want to get to a point where you've isolated your absolute value. So you have your absolute value is equal to a number. And then you apply that rule that we've been doing where you set it equal to the positive and set it equal to the negative, and then you solve. Okay, so we're going to look at a couple harder examples on those. Okay, so taking a look at this one, what I notice is I've got 2/7 minus the absolute value of 4x minus 11 is equal to negative 12/7. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to subtract 2/7 from both sides. Okay, and thank God I've got a common denominator. I didn't feel like doing that again. But if we had to, we have to. Okay, so I've got the negative absolute value of 4x minus 11. And this is equal to, check this out. Okay, I got negative 12 minus 2 over 7. This gives me negative 14 over 7. Okay, so really what happens here is I get the negative absolute value of 4x minus 11. And this is equal to negative 2. Ooh, that's nice. So now what I have is I have this negative up front. And you can think of this as like negative 1 times the absolute value. So remember, I want to just isolate the absolute value. I want to get that completely alone. So what I do is I divide everything by negative 1, and I get the absolute value of 4x minus 11. Let me make that big. And that's equal to positive 2. So what I'm going to do now that I have isolated my absolute value, okay, I'm going to rewrite this up here. All right, and that's the absolute value of 4x minus 11. And that's equal to 2. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take that value, okay, to get rid of my absolute value, I have my two options. I got to set 4x minus 11 equal to positive 2, okay, and I've got to set 4x minus 11 equal to negative 2, all right? That's how I get rid of my absolute value every single time. So then what I do is I'm going to add 11 to both sides, okay, and I get that 4x is equal to 13, okay, divide by 4, and I get that x is equal to 13/4, okay? Totally reasonable to get a fraction as your answer, okay, totally cool. All right, and then what I want to do is do the same thing over here, but I'm going to add 11 to both sides, and I'm going to get that 4x is equal to positive 9. I'm going to divide both sides by 4 and by 4, and so then I get that x is equal to 9/4, okay? And those are both my answers. I have two solutions here, okay? So now let's take a look at the next one, and this will be the last problem we do. But same thing, okay? I want to just isolate my absolute value symbol, so I'm going to, move everything else over. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 9.2 from both sides, okay? So I get 5 times the absolute value of 7 plus 4x, absolute value, is equal to, and then if I do 13.6 minus 9.2, that's going to give me 4.4, okay? And so from there, what I want to do is I want to divide both sides by 5, okay? So then I get that the absolute value of 7 plus 4x is equal to, and 4.4 divided by 5, 4.4 divided by 5 is going to give me 0.88, all right? So if I take this, okay, once I have this, I'm going to rewrite this up here. So I got the absolute value of 7 plus 4x, and that's equal to 0.88. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do two of them. Okay, I've got 7 plus 4x, get rid of the absolute value symbol, and set that equal to the positive 0.88. Okay, and then at the same time, okay, what I'm going to do is take what's inside the absolute value, 7 plus 4x, and set that equal to the negative 0.88. All right, and then I'm just going to solve for x. So here I'm going to subtract by 7 on both sides. So if I take 0.88 and subtract 7, that's going to give me that 4x is equal to negative 6.12. Okay, divide by 4, divide by 4. All right, that's going to give me that x is equal to negative 1.53. Okay, that's the first one. Okay, the second one is just solving that equation for x. Subtract 7 on both sides. So I get 4x is equal to negative 7.88. And if I divide by 4 and divide by 4, so negative 7.88, divide that by 4, and that's going to give me negative 1.97. So x is going to equal negative 1.97, okay? And that's it, okay? So hopefully that makes sense to you. You know, it's some algebra stuff. We will look at how you do this stuff graphically. But guys, I want you to look at this. You know, I can't physically do these without actually writing them out. So, you know, the expectation is that you're writing these things out and that you're working on it. So that's all I got. So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and we'll talk to you later. Bye!